All right, good morning. Awesome. My name is Kayla Varberg. I'm a LAM patient, a researcher, and a proud member of the LAM Foundation Board of Directors. It's truly an honor to welcome you all to Kansas City. Woo! I'm so excited that you're here with us. Whether you've traveled far or just a few miles, thank you for being a part of this special gathering. I hope you found a comfortable seat in your designated regions, and if you haven't yet, please feel free to move around. And don't forget to grab and wear the beads that we've provided for you. They're a small symbol of the vibrant community we're building together. As someone who lives right here in Kansas City, I can tell you firsthand how special this place is. Yes, we're known for our barbecue, as you may have heard, and our jazz, but what really makes Kansas City shine is its people. There's a warmth here, a kind of collective hug that makes you feel welcome the moment you arrive. And I've already heard several stories that people have felt that warmth as they've come here to Kansas City. But Kansas City is also becoming something more. It's becoming a hub for rare disease advocacy, research, and community. And that's something that I'm deeply grateful for. It's inspiring to see how the city is embracing the rare disease space and how all of you are contributing to that momentum by coming here for LAMposium. Today is about learning, sharing, and connecting. It's about being part of something bigger than ourselves, and I'm so glad you're here to be a part of it with me. Now, I'd like to introduce somebody who embodies the heart and mission of the LAM Foundation, and that's Cindy Beasley. Cindy has a long and impactful history with the foundation. She's served as a board member, a patient liaison, and now leads as our Director of Education and Advocacy. Diagnosed with LAM in 2001, Cindy has dedicated her professional life to nonprofit service and remains deeply committed to helping women with LAM live their best lives and to ultimately finding a cure. Please join me in welcoming Cindy Beasley.
Thank you, Kayla, for all your work as chair of this fabulous conference and for your Kansas City hug to us all. We appreciate you. So good morning, everyone. It is so amazing to see you all in person. I've interacted with a lot of you on Zoom or even by email, and what a blessing it is to have you here this weekend. So thank you for taking the time and the travel to be here. I want to take you on a journey through time. A journey of what it has meant to live with LAM through the years. The earliest recorded case dates back to 1918, when a woman with tuberous sclerosis, or TSC LAM, died from bilateral pneumothoraces. The first description of what we now know as sporadic LAM appeared in 1937, when it was called muscular cirrhosis. I can only imagine the loneliness and the fear our sisters with LAM must have endured for decades. It makes me sad just thinking about it. Living in a world without a name for their disease, without answers, and without hope. Over the years, LAM appeared in scattered mentions in the literature. Then in the 1990s, the story began to change. A young woman named Andrea Burns was diagnosed with this rare lung disease. With nowhere to turn, she looked at her mother and said, "You're my only hope." Out of that desperate moment came something extraordinary. In 1995, Sue and Fran Burns launched the LAM Foundation with Dr. Frank McCormick. They put LAM on the map, creating a beacon of hope that has carried us to where we are today. From there, it also became our story. Stories of heartbreak and of hope, of friends we've lost and those we're blessed to walk beside today. Stories of years of misdiagnosis and frustration and the relief of finally having a treatment, something only 5% of rare diseases can claim. And today, it's your stories we want to hear. Let's walk this journey through time together. I've invited several patients to share their story, each representing a different decade since the LAM Foundation began. We begin and I'm going to see if I can get this technology to work. In the 1990s with Tish Davey, a young mother in her 30s, living in New York. She was an avid tennis player. Tish began experiencing symptoms of shortness of breath with her first pregnancy, which only worsened with her second and third. No longer able to ignore symptoms, she searched for answers and received a LAM diagnosis in 1993, 2 years before the LAM Foundation began. Now, she was told she could die within the year and that her best hope was a transplant. Her ovaries were removed, she was put on Depo-Provera shots, and struggled to find support and resources. There was no internet back then. The disease was little known. Despair is the word she uses to describe that time, until 1995.
People who grew up in the 1960s, like I did, will tell you that they remember exactly where and when they were when they first heard the news that President Kennedy was assassinated. It was such a seismic event in our individual and collective lives that the event is really seared into our memories. That's the way I think of it when I think of the first time I talked to Sue Burns. I remember exactly where I was in my living room and what time in the afternoon it was when I picked up the phone, and it was a mother calling from Cincinnati. She told me that her daughter had experienced a collapsed lung and that had received a diagnosis of LAM, and that she was working very closely with her daughter's pulmonologist, Dr. Frank McCormick, on what she needed to do to bring attention to the disease. And he was advising her that she needed to start a foundation to generate fundraising, to bring patients together, bring, again, more attention to the disease, and how he was willing to help her on the scientific and medical front to kind of bring this disease into the forefront. We talked for a long time, and she was very upfront, saying that nothing in her background really suggested that she had the expertise and skills to do this, but she was going to make a difference. And I heard the sheer determination in her voice and got off the phone and said to my husband, wow, that woman is going to change the landscape. And quite frankly, very quickly, it seemed like there was change. There was positive change. Soon after that, I attended one of the first LAM Foundation fundraisers in Bridgeport, Connecticut, got to meet Sue and got to meet other patients for the first time, which was life-changing. Soon after that, there was the listserv, which was much more than a network. It brought LAM patients together as a community. And on the scientific front, Frank McCormick started bringing experienced practitioners together and researchers and scientists so that there was an expertise developing around this disease. So meanwhile, personally, during the late 1990s, my disease continued to progress. And I ended up having a lung transplant. I'm fortunate to have a double lung transplant in December 2000. So in December, I will mark the 25th anniversary of my lung transplant. Notably, the LAM Foundation was there for me at every stage leading up to my transplant and in the 25 years post-transplant. So I can honestly say that the LAM Foundation has helped me live a life that has been impacted by LAM, yes, but has not been defined by it. And lastly, when I think of Sue, I think back to that conversation on that sunny afternoon and think how she is a profound example of the power of one. And I'm so very thankful that she partnered with Frank McCormick from the very start and that he was willing to devote so much of his career to solving the mystery of this disease and making life better for all of us. And I believe that their single-mindedness and determination has changed the landscape for all lamb patients. Thank you.
I had hoped Tish could be with us today, but she had some other issues she had to deal with up in New York. But I thought her story is so powerful, to be someone right from the beginning who was diagnosed with Lyme, and to be a 25-year transplant survivor, right? That's remarkable. So I hope you all find great encouragement in that. But as many in this room can attest, Lyme does not have geographic boundaries. Across the pond, so to speak, another young mother was facing this little-known disease. Helen Grice brings the international perspective of a Lyme diagnosis in 1999.
Okay, the joys of oxygen. Hi, everybody, and welcome to LAMposium. My name is Helen Grice. I was born in England, and our family emigrated to the US 25 years ago. The number 25 keeps coming up. When my husband was offered a job. This is my third LAMposium, and it's wonderful to be here and to see all of you. My story of Lyme begins in the UK in 1992. At the age of 30, I was 21 weeks pregnant with my first child and on holiday with my family when I started to experience severe pain in my right flank. So severe that we left our holiday and drove back home straight to the emergency room. Fearful of an ectopic pregnancy, my doctor ordered an ultrasound, which revealed a large mass on my right kidney. Because it looked like it could be malignant, the surgeon removed the whole kidney, but thankfully, the mass was a benign angiomyolipoma. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with those. The surgery didn't harm my baby, and he was born healthy in 1993. So then over the next 6 years, I had another baby boy, plus lots of pneumothoraces. First on the left side, I think at the count of 4, they decided to do pleurodesis. Then the right side started to go. Hang on, sorry, I'm lost my place. Okay, I'd also got a lot of fatigue and shortness of breath, and the doctors were baffled. And I was tested for multiple diseases, none of which I'd got. So it wasn't until I was referred to Dr. Mike Cushley, who was a thoracic surgeon, and he had knowledge of Lyme because he'd been working with Professor Anne Tattersfield at Nottingham. Dr. Cushley wrote to Sue Burns, oh, I'm sorry, that's when I got my diagnosis in 1999. So Dr. Cushley wrote to Sue Burns, he'd heard of the Lyme Foundation through Anne, and she wrote to me a lovely letter, which I've still got, I've kept it. And he also put me in touch with Professor Anne Tattersfield and Simon Johnson, who you'll see, he's here for the conference, at Nottingham City Hospital in the University of Nottingham. And they were studying Lyme and providing patient care. It was a really scary time for my husband and I. So little was known about Lyme in the 90s. No one could give me a timeline of symptoms or disease progression. Our boys were just 6 and 3. When we moved to Richmond, Virginia in the year 2000, there were no Lyme clinics, but the Lyme Foundation helped me again to find a pulmonologist with knowledge of Lyme and put me in touch with my Lyme liaison. Sorry. You got this. Very little was known about Lyme at that time and how to treat it. So the fact that it only seemed to affect women of childbearing age led to the assumption that it was somehow connected to estrogen. So the recommendation was to give massive doses of progesterone in the form of shots of Depo-Provera. So that's what I did. I was administered in my PCP's office for 11 years. I was made aware of the risks, but I decided to go ahead anyway, because I didn't know if I'd live long enough to suffer any of them. So guess what? Now I have osteoporosis. Oh well, there's Fosamax. Yay for science, yay for doctors. Okay, years later, as my lung function began to noticeably decline, my pulmonologist, who'd been closely following the progress of the MILES trial, recommended that I visit one of the recently formed LAM clinics. So in 2011, I was able to visit the LAM clinic director, Dr. Joseph Peramble, at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, who prescribed sirolimus and said, get off that progesterone. I've been taking the sirolimus ever since. It has slowed my disease progression and shrunk the multiple angios on my remaining kidney to where I no longer need to see a nephrologist. Yay, sirolimus. I'm still here, albeit with supplemental oxygen 24/7. I got to watch my boys grow up and begin their life adventures. And in February of this year, I traveled to Washington, D.C. with the marvelous Cindy Beasley to advocate for our LAM community. And I'm doing a little talk about that tomorrow in the oxygen session if you want to hear more about that. I'm extremely thankful to the LAM Foundation for the work that they do to further the research and to the community of patients that have been so supportive to me over the years, some of whom have become dear friends. In particular, I'm grateful for my LAM liaison, Mary Stojic, whose love and support mean so much to me. So, a lot has changed since my diagnosis in 1999, and I'm excited to see what the future brings. There, got it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Helen. From Helen's story, we move into the 2000s, a decade of exponential growth in awareness, fundraising, and research. The first LAMposium was held in 2000, and by the end of this decade, the groundbreaking MILES trial had begun. In 2005, Karen Mayberry was serving in the military and received her diagnosis.
Good morning. It is truly a pleasure to be back in the Kansas City area where I grew up as a young girl and then returned to attend the University of Kansas School of Law in the 80s. So it's kind of like coming back home. As Cindy mentioned, I was in the military when I was diagnosed. I joined the Air Force in 1990 and proceeded to do what new lawyers in the Air Force do. In 2005, I was stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi. I was performing my annual physical fitness test, running 1.5 miles, and struggling to breathe. I finished the test, which I passed, had a follow-up with my doctor the next week, and it was discovered that I had a 60% collapsed lung. So that made the test a little bit more exciting. Within moments, I had a chest tube. I spent 4 days in the on-base hospital and then was released home. I had a follow-up with that doctor the next week, a man I had never met before then, and he said, "Do you know why you're here?" I said, "Well, of course, because I just had a collapsed lung." And he gave me the diagnosis of LAM. That's pretty much all I remember about that day, other than he handed me a brochure that said I had a 10-year life expectancy, that I couldn't fly, and I was scheduled to fly home the next week, and that I was going to go on Depo-Provera shots. That ugly word. I did start those shots, and we were going to have a follow-up within, I think, 2 weeks. And I know now, by looking back at my records, that he said we'd probably do a biopsy. 11 days after my visit with that doctor, Hurricane Katrina hit Biloxi and leveled the base hospital. I never saw that doctor again because all of the physicians assigned to Keesler Air Force Base were reassigned to hospitals that actually functioned. But I still got my Depo-Provera shots for the next 6 months. I was reassigned. I went back to DC, where my husband was living at the time. But before then, I had 2 more lung collapses. They said they would be recurring. I didn't think that meant months apart. I thought maybe it meant years apart. But in August, they both collapsed. In December, when I went home for Christmas, I had another collapse. And I was fortunate to be brought to the Walter Reed Army Hospital, where I met the most wonderful pulmonologist I can ever recall. And they did pleurodesis on both sides. So my Christmas vacation ended up terminating on Valentine's Day when I went back to Biloxi, essentially to move out. Between 25 and 2014, I had 2 more lung collapses. One was when I was stationed in Davis-Monthan, Arizona. Again, got a chest tube, but this time I got to go home with it. I don't recommend that to anybody. But it sounded like a better thing than staying in the hospital. And then again in 2012, I was stationed in Newport News, Virginia. Another lung collapse, another take-home chest tube. And they did pleurodesis again on the right side there. So during that time, I kept getting military assignments, and at one point, they decided they were going to medically retire me. I wasn't ready for that, so I fought it. They had determined I was 100% disabled with LAM, and I needed to go. But through the support of my doctors and my command, I said, what I do for the Air Force, I can still do, so you should let me stay. And they did, much to my surprise, but and to theirs. And so I was able to stay for a full 30-year tour and retired in 2020. To me, that was important because it was hard enough to accept the disease, but to have the disease take my livelihood and everything that I had known, I just couldn't take all of that at once. So I don't like to think I was in denial, but I certainly downplayed the diagnosis if I thought it was going to threaten some other part. It was enough what it was doing to me. I just didn't want it to take over my whole life. I did have the opportunity to go to NIH with testing that I had never even thought could be done. And 24-hour urine collection was just a joy. But I understood that all of that was to try to help all of us figure out what could be done. Because I never had that biopsy, I never had a definitive diagnosis. So I couldn't go on sirolimus in the early days. But I went on it in 2014, and I've been on it since. And I certainly know that it has slowed the progression. I sleep with oxygen. I use oxygen if I'm exerting myself, but otherwise, I don't need it. I know when I do, and I even fight that still to this day. I did go through the evaluation process for a lung transplant. I was found to be an eligible candidate, but deemed to be too soon to be put on the list. So I know that means I'll go through that absolutely horrific scavenger hunt of tests again, but it does tell you that every other part of your body functions really well, except for your lungs. I still work full-time. And again, as I mentioned, I didn't want LAM to define me as a person. But now I am much more open and telling people, everybody I work with now knows where I am this weekend. so that they understand that you can still be you with this disease. My husband is here, my family, all of them have been so supportive throughout this whole journey. And if you had told me back then that 20 years from now I'd be standing here talking about it, I would have said, no way. The doctor told me I only had 10 years to live. But I want to thank all of you, the LAM Foundation, NIH, and all the patients who are so willing to share so that we all learn and have the strength of everybody together. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was really powerful. So, the 2010s brought even more progress. In 2010, VEGF-D was validated as a diagnostic biomarker. In 2011, the results of the MILES trial were published, proving rapamycin could slow the progression of LAM. By 2015, the FDA approved rapamycin as a treatment, an astonishing accomplishment in such a short period of time. Diagnosed at age 29, Christine Kruger entered her own LAM journey in 2016, right in the midst of this wave of discovery and hope. Christine?
Hi, everyone. Out of all the women on this stage, I feel the luckiest. As Cindy just said, I was diagnosed right in the midst of a wave of discovery. The VEGF-D test spared me a 9-day hospital stay with 3 chest tubes, so they could do an invasive biopsy. I didn't have to do that. And then the FDA approval of sirolimus gave me a drug that has kept my lungs stable for the past 9 years and given me my future back, one where I can have a career and family. But I skipped to the end. Of course, my story is not as straightforward as that, as I'm sure many of your stories are not. But as you listen to my story, I hope you hear the impact that all the women who came before me and the impact the LAM Foundation has had on my ability to stand here today, and how incredibly lucky I feel to be a part of this amazing group of women, their partners, our clinicians, and the scientists who made the progress of the 2010s my reality. The first sign that I had that anything was wrong was actually pressure behind my ears, and I had lymph fluid accumulating there. And then I had a cough that didn't go away, but gave me a really nice 6-pack of abs. Both symptoms that were dismissed by primary care as being nothing. Then in October 2015, only a few months after sirolimus had been approved for LAM, I was running a half marathon when around mile 4, I felt a sharp pain in the top right part of my back. And the pain continued every time I tried to breathe. My friend and I walked over to the medical tent where I received my next misdiagnosis. I was told, you pulled a muscle. They put some icy hot on it, gave me some Tylenol, and said, keep going, but maybe walk. So I did. I walked the rest of that half marathon. And I had that pain in my shoulder whenever I breathed for the next month and a half. And that's now what I know the time it took for the oxygen to reabsorb in my lung after a pneumothorax. Then on a Sunday morning, a few months later, in February 2016, that sharp pain returned and my vision went dark. I barely had time to make it to the floor before I briefly passed out. When I came to, I got up and told my fiance, now husband, Adam, that the pain had returned. Adam convinced me to go to urgent care instead of staying home to watch the Indianapolis Colts play. That's what I wanted to do. And he said, he was like, I'm sure we'll be back in time before kickoff, and you'll just get something to help you breathe. At urgent care, they listened to my lungs and heart, did all my vitals, everything looked great. The nurse practitioner said, but to be on the safe side, she wanted to do an x-ray to look at my heart. And while we were waiting for the x-ray result, she came in and said, oh, you should be good to go home soon. Here's a prescription for an inhaler. And then less than 5 minutes later, she came back in the room and said, if you panic, things will get worse. I've called an ambulance, and they're gonna take you to the nearest hospital. You have a tension pneumothorax. I'll be right back. And I very clearly remember looking at Adam and being like, what is that? And then he looks at me and goes, you feel fine, right? And I was like, yeah. And she came back in with all the ambulance personnel, and we were so overwhelmed, didn't know what a tension pneumothorax was, that we told them we would drive to the hospital because we didn't want the ambulance bill. And on the way to the hospital, I texted my sister, who was doing her residency in emergency medicine, and my text said, is a tension pneumothorax bad? And she replied immediately saying, yes, very, why? And I said, I have one, but I'm gonna go get it fixed, is what I texted. So to finish out that story, I got my first chest tube, and my next misdiagnosis of spontaneous pneumothoraces happened to tall, thin people. And then after this incident, I was very worried. So I thought I had cancer. I had a cough, I had the pneumothoraces, and so I cold called pulmonologists until I found one who could see me in the Bay Area within the month. After several visits, including my first PFT, which was strange, then a chest CT, which did not look good, my pulmonologist told me my lungs were filled with cysts. I asked him how many. He told me too many to count, and he had to show it to me because I didn't believe he couldn't count them. And then he said it looked like emphysema, and at the time I was moving to Boston, and he made me promise that I would set up time with another pulmonologist to figure out what was going on. But a week after this last visit with him, and 2 weeks before my wedding, I came across LAM in a Google search. I panicked. It matched every symptom that I had, and the first prognosis I saw was not very good. I immediately got set up to see a pulmonologist in Indiana where I was getting married. The pulmonologist confirmed that LAM was a likely diagnosis and that I would need a lung biopsy to confirm. It's at this point in my journey that the LAM Foundation changed my life. My husband and I had just gotten married and met with a biopsy surgeon, and he told me that it was going to be 9 days in the hospital, 3 chest tubes, so they could take 4 pieces of my lung the size of my thumb. My husband was so upset because it felt like this was incredibly invasive. No one we had spoken to knew anything about this disease, so we went online again and found the LAM Foundation. On the foundation's webpage, we found Dr. Frank McCormick's contact information. I emailed him that night at 10 p.m., explaining my situation, and he replied back to my email the next morning at 5:33 in the morning, less than 7 hours later, saying the diagnosis could be made without a biopsy. And Dr. Gupta joined the email thread at 5:37 a.m., I don't know what they do in the morning, saying that he'd be happy to see me in Cincinnati, explaining a VEGF-D test, saying that I could send my CT to them, and introducing me to their coordinator to help schedule a visit and all the necessary labs. From here, I got a well-informed diagnosis. My VEGF-D levels were over 4,000. Dr. Gupta connected me to Dr. Hensky in Boston. Sue Sherman, the previous LAM Foundation executive director, reached out, let me know the foundation was there to answer any of my questions. I received a patient handbook in the mail, a LAM mentor, and was invited to my first LAMposium. I also got started on sirolimus, a hope for a treatment that I didn't think was a possibility when I first heard LAM was a rare disease. I'm standing here today, 9 years after my diagnosis, with essentially the same lung function I had in 2016, married to my amazing husband, Adam. I've had 0 additional pneumothoraces, and now have 3 children born via surrogacy. I'm also now serving on the LAM Foundation's board of directors and realizing a career in the pharma industry, bringing new therapies to other patients. All things I didn't originally think were going to be possible for me. The LAM Foundation has literally changed my life. It gave me a clear diagnosis, it gave me a treatment, it gave me a future, and it gave me a community of women that understand what it means to have LAM. Like I said at the start, I feel so incredibly lucky, but I know it was more than luck that brought me my clear diagnosis and therapy. It was this community of people, and I have full faith that the same community is going to bring even more impact in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Christine. This brings us to today. This decade, your decade. Now it is your turn to share. Here in this room, you are among LAM sisters, families, and friends. You are in the safest, most welcoming place possible to tell your story. We may not know each other personally. We may not share the same backgrounds or experiences. But what we do share is profound. A journey with LAM that has shaped us, challenged us, and will connect us in ways we never expected. My hope for you in this time that we have together is that you discover the courage, strength, and hope that comes from being known and from knowing others who truly get you. And when you leave this weekend, I hope you carry gratitude for this beautiful community, for this weekend, for the LAM Foundation, and for the future that we're building together. So at this time, I'm going to step away from this microphone and invite you to share your LAM story with those at your respective tables. There are conversation starter cards, although I pretty much think LAM patients don't really need those, but just in case, we have those for both patients and loved ones. If you don't want to share anything, that's okay. Our LAM liaisons are also seated in the various regions, and some other volunteers, could you raise your hands so people know who you are? And I've got, Thespana and some others, yep, thank you. And they're here to help, support, and to lead as needed.
Can I thank you for welcoming me? Every warm welcome and smile that I'm getting is just, it means a lot. Thank you. And let me tell you what else means a lot. These lovely ladies over there, so be ready. This is the most wonderful team. They are so hardworking. They are so passionate. They're problem solvers, and it really is a joy to be able to be working with you. So let me do a clicker. There you go. Those are some wonderful headshots, but let's bring them up in person. So this group has put together LAMposium. The last LAMposium, as you know, was 3 years ago. So not only have they put this wonderful opportunity for us to gather, but this is a commitment that they have each and every day. So what I would like to do is introduce the team, because you are only as good as your team, right? All right, so who gets to start? Julie, come on up. This is Julie. Julie handles our community events, our fundraisers. She works with our board. She keeps me calm when I have tech issues, and there's always a lot of tech issues. So we are so grateful, Julie, for all your support. Thank you. Jenny, come on up. Jenny has been with the foundation for 12 years. She has really been our anchor for LAMposium and then some. She helps us plan, she helps us budget, she helps us keep to the plan and the budget. So Jenny, we are so fortunate to have you as you and anchoring us for all of these years. Thank you, Jenny. All right, who could I pick on next? Cora. Come on, Cora. This is Cora, and she is our digital engagement manager. She handles communications, those beautiful currents, updates that you receive, your newsletters. Cora. And she's a creative at heart. We have that in hand. We love museums and creative things, so thank you, Cora. How about, is Karen over there? Where is Karen? Karen Kinsey, there's Karen Kinsey. Hi, Karen Kinsey. Karen is a wonderful, she was a volunteer, and then we were so fortunate to have her come and join us to coordinate the Circle of Hope. Karen, your creativity, your problem solving, both on the fundraising side and also through your experience with transplants, just is a joy. And we are so looking forward to you continuing to be a really important part of our team and our community. So thank you, Karen. Jen, we got you away from the research section. Jen, yay, Jen. All right. Jen has done an amazing job with our grants, our peer-reviewed research. She has been a masterful project manager, trying to make sure that we do have intersections with our patient sessions and our research sessions. And boy, she is Omaha, Nebraska, salt of the earth, funny as heck. There we go. Thank you. Erin. Her voice just is soothing. If you have ever been so fortunate to be able to call Erin and have her put you in touch during moments when you really need some support, it's definitely Erin. So thank you. Stephanie has a week on me. Stephanie started in April as our head of development and communications. She's a pro. She's a can-do. We walked in and she said, Patty, we're off to the races. And every day since, she has brought a wonderful smile, smarts, and she's a wonderful partner. Thank you so much. Vera, come on up. Vera is our scientific director. Vera has jumped in this particular role and just has been so steady and able to bring me up to speed as quickly and thoughtfully as possible. You have just blended right in with our team and helped us kind of make sense of all things research, and we are just grateful for you. Thank you so much. And last but not least, you're coming back up. Come on, Cindy. Cindy? Cindy's our glue. Cindy's a team captain. Cindy keeps us honest, and she's our biggest cheerleader. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for what this team has done and continues to do. We are as good as our team. KDW, I see Diane just came in here. Thank you, KDW, for helping us make this LAMposium work. And there is one very important person who we have discussed at length here, and just not today, but beyond. And it's our friend and founder, Sue Burns. Sue would have loved to have been here with us today, but she has COVID. And so she wants stories, she wants pictures. We want to make sure she hears the stories. So there's going to be cards wishing her well, and they will be in the registration desk as soon as we are done. All right, so please, please reach out. Let Sue know that we continue to think about her. And, you know, she's in our thoughts and she's in our prayers for a speedy recovery. So I did want to say, yes, we have a wonderful weekend with LAMposium planned. This team helps with research. We have peer-reviewed research. You're going to be hearing about some of the research that's awarded later this year. And this is such a robust program. And at the heart of the matter is you. It's our community, it's our patients, it's our voice, it's our caregivers, it's our friends, it's us. So I thank you. I thank you for being here with us. I thank you for being here with us for our next 30. And we're looking forward to seeing what's going to come next together as we get loud for LAM. So with that being said, please one more big round of applause for this wonderful team. Thank you. And so you'll see them as the weekend goes on, and not just the weekend, but the weekend and beyond. But I just wanted to make sure that they were thanked. They're hardworking. They take a bit of a break on a stage. And then we will take a break, and we will be back together at 10:45 and here to hear from our founder, Dr. Frank McCormick. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon.